Hi, good evening, everyone. I hope my voice is clearly audible. You can simply raise your hands to confirm this. Okay, great, great. So, all right, guys. So we'll be proceeding ahead with the discussions where we left in the previous session. All right, we were discussing about, just to give you a brief about what we were discussing in the previous session. Let me just walk you through. Right, so we discussed about the percentiles, minimum and maximum. Right, so I hope everyone is able to see my screen. All right, so basically we were discussing about the percentiles, right? Starting with the percentiles here. We also discussed before percentile, the minimum and maximum values, how you can find in a particular data set. First using the min function itself, right? Then using the max function, followed by how small and large function works, right? Then we did proceed ahead with calculating the percentiles, right? Proceeding ahead, we also saw quartiles, median, mode, and mean, right? So these are the topics that we discussed in the previous session. Right, so proceeding ahead with this, I gave you a little homework in the previous session. I hope everyone did attempt the homework, right? And these are the list of, let's say, the questions that were given as homework. The first is you have to find the basically first, second, third, fourth, and so on, the largest and the smallest salary received by the employees. You just have to use the small and large function along with the value of k, right? The value of k can be decided. For example, if you want to find the fifth largest value, you can simply use the large function and use the value of k as 5, right? In the similar way, if you want to find the fifth smallest value, you can simply proceed ahead by using the small function and using the value of k as 5, right? So this is how you can simply, let's say, solve this particular question. Right. Moving ahead, I also gave you the homework related to, let's say, the youngest and the eldest employees working in the organization. You have to solve this particular question using the min and small as well as max and large functions, right? So to find the youngest employee, you can directly use the minimum function and you call the salary column as input, right? So call the age column as input to find the youngest employee, right? At the same time, you can use the small function where you can pass the age column as your input and the value of k as 1. This will give you the youngest employee. Same goes with the eldest employee. Either you can use the maximum function, right? And otherwise, you can also use the large function, and the value of k that has to be used is 1. Right? In the similar way, you can find the youngest, second youngest, fourth, eldest, etc. Simply pass your age column and use the value of k as 2 for the youngest employee by using the small function. And to find the fourth eldest employee, you just have to use the large function, pass in the age column, and use the value of k as 4. Right? So this is how you can simply solve these questions. Moving ahead, you have to calculate the percentiles for every value with a difference of 0.5. Right? So for example, you have to find 0th percentile, 0.5th percentile, first percentile, 1.5th percentile, second percentile, and so on. And that too on the salary column. Right? Moving ahead, you have to find the percentiles on the age column, right? Every percentile value in the age column. Simply use the percentile.inc function and pass the age column as your input, right? Along with the value of k, you'll easily get the percentiles. Right, moving ahead, find the median of the age column using percentiles. So how you can do this? Simply find the 50th percentile. Simply find the 50th percentile. Using quartiles, simply use the value of quart as 2. Right, moving ahead, using the median function, you can directly use the median function. All right, and final question is you have to find the quartiles of for age column. Simply use the quartile.inc function, right, and you'll be able to solve this particular question. Simply pass the age column as input, and let's say age column as your input, and the value of k as 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 based on what percentile you want, what quartile value you want to find. Right, so this way you can simply use the quartile functions and find the quartiles of the age column. Right, so I hope everyone did attempt the homework and they were able to resolve. All right, so if you're passing the formula and every time you're getting the same output, you need to check the value of k, whether you're passing it correctly or not, right? Simply double click on the cell and check whether you are getting the right output or not. Right, so all right guys, I'll share the homework, the solution of this homework on the same GitHub link that I have shared with you. Right, so you'll receive the solutions latest by Monday, right? I'll simply upload the solutions and I've just discussed how you can proceed ahead and resolve these questions. Right, so those who have already done, you can simply cross-check your answers with the ones that I'm sharing. All right, so this will basically help you. All right. All right, so moving ahead with this, today we are going to discuss about the logical operators and logical functions. Right, so today we are going to discuss about the logical operators. We'll start with the logical operators. Right, there are a few logical operators. Those are used. Right, and these logical operators are nothing but these are basically the conditions that will help you to decide the output of an operation. Right, so there are a few logical operators. I'm sure those who are from engineering background, you must have studied this with a term called logic gates. Right, those who are from engineering background, they'll very much be able to relate with this particular term, which is logic gates. Right, so basically we have a few operators, right, starting with the OR operator, then we have AND, right, and the third one is NOT. Right, so these are the three operators that purely works on logic, and this will help you to decide the final output of your result. Right, so for example, let's discuss the OR operator first. Right, so this OR operator, or basically the OR keyword, basically means how morphologically this particular word means. This means either of two, either of the two. Right, so this basically means OR will always be present between two sides. Right, so let's assume that this is your left hand side and this is your right hand side. All right, so when I say let's say, for example, you need to pick one of these. So I'll simply ask you to pick either left-hand side or right-hand side, right? So let's say, for example, I simply ask you to pick one. So you'll pick either of it, right? You cannot pick both of them. You'll pick only one. Let's say you pick left-hand side, right? So this is the one that you have picked, right? And so RHS is eliminated, right? Or the dominance that we have is for the LHS, which is left-hand side, right? So these are nothing but the conditions when it comes to using the OR operators in data analysis, right? So these will be conditions. Let's say this is my condition 1 and this is my condition 2, right? So let's say, for example, I simply ask you, let's take an example. This will help you to understand this in a better way, right? So let's say I ask you to go to the supermarket. Simply follow these instructions, right? Simply go to supermarket and you either have to buy, let's say you buy either, let's say, iPhone or a MacBook. Right. So you simply go to the supermarket, right, and buy either iPhone or MacBook, right? So since this OR is present, you're going to purchase only one item of both of these, right? So either iPhone or MacBook, right? This purely depends. Let's say if iPhone is available, you'll check first for the availability, which one of them is available. Let's say if only iPhone is available, you'll be able to buy only iPhone. If only MacBook is available, you'll only be able to buy MacBook, right? So let's say if both of them are available, you have to make a choice in that case, right? So when you have to make a choice, this is where the OR will help you, right? So of course, AND will also help you, but we'll discuss the same example using AND as well. Let's discuss using OR first. Right, so I simply ask you to go to the supermarket and simply buy either iPhone or MacBook, right? So you'll first check for the availability of these. If let's say either of the one item is available, you'll simply purchase that particular item. But if both of them are available, then you have to make a choice. All right. So OR works in the similar way, right? So this is basically your first condition. Right, so this is your condition 1 and this is your condition 2, right? So you simply have to, let's say when it comes to data analysis, right? Analysis of the data, this purely works between conditions, right? Cells. Simply walk you through, there will be 4 scenarios, right? When conditions are used, let's say when you, basically, let's say your condition 1 is satisfied, right? So let's say, for example, conditions will always give you output in 2 ways. First is whether the condition will be satisfied, right? The second thing is the condition will be not satisfied. All right. So these are the 2 outputs that you can get, right? So in technical terms, the satisfaction of condition basically returns true as the output, right? And not satisfied condition returns false as the output, because we need to know whether the condition is satisfied or not, right? So this is the Boolean value in which your system gives you output, right? So basically, every condition will give you either true or false, right? So in the similar way, when we are using OR between 2 conditions, this is basically 2 into 2. Combinations will be built for true and false, and you will get the relevant output based on how we are getting the outputs, right? So I'll just walk you through. Let's say your first condition returns true and your second condition also returns true. So OR between true and true will basically return you true as the output. All right. Now, let's say your first condition returns you true, but your second condition returns false. What will happen in this case, right? So in this case also, you'll get true as the output, right? In the similar way, let's say this condition can return you a false, and the second condition will return you a true, right? So in this case, also you'll get true as the output, right? And the fourth condition is when both the conditions returns false as the output. So in this condition, you'll get false as the final output. This is the final output, right? So when we'll take examples, this will be more clear, right? So how you can summarize this is basically or will work between two conditions. First is your condition 1 and second is your condition 2. So the combination of both of these will give you 4 kinds of combination that can be built, right? The first is when condition 1 returns you true and condition 2 also returns you true. So in this case, the final output will be true here. The second condition is the second combination is when the first condition returns you true and second condition returns you false. So in this case as well, you'll get true as the final output, right? The third combination that we will build is when your first condition returns false and second condition returns true, right? So false or true will always give you true as the output. All right. Now the fourth combination is when both the conditions returns you true. So this is the only case where you'll get false as the output. Otherwise, for all other conditions, you'll get true as the output. Right. So this is how your OR will work. Right. So let's see an example here. This will make things more clear. If anyone wants to take the screenshot of this, you're free to do. Right. So please take a screenshot if you wish to. All right. So let's proceed ahead. Let me just remove this. All right. So let's see the practical implementation of this, right? So in OR, what will happen is you can always use the inbuilt function OR, right? So let me just copy a sample data, right? And let me show you. I'll walk you through what that particular data is. Right, so this is the same example that we are taking from our previous session where we discussed about the marks. Basically, this data set we discussed in the percentage part where we discussed percentage. We use this data only. All right. Right. So I'll just walk you through. This column contains the name of the students, right? And these are the subject and the respective marks from the scored by any particular student, right? So let me just give you an example. Let's say Akash, he has scored 67 marks in mathematics, 54 marks in physics, and 88 marks in chemistry, right? So this overall is basically these scores are evaluated out of 100, right? So Akash has scored 67 out of 100 in mathematics, right? He has scored 54 out of 100 in physics and 88 out of 100 in chemistry, right? So we have added all of these out of 100, which is total overall marks. And this is basically the sum of all these. So which is why 300 is present here. All right. Now, what we'll do is, first, let me show you how OR function works, right? So OR will basically, let's build a table here for the OR gate. right? So the first condition will be true, or let's say true or true, right? Second will be true or false. Third will be false or true. And fourth will be false or false, right? Now here we'll directly use the OR function, right? So OR function basically checks whether any of the argument are true and returns true, or false, right? And returns false if all the arguments are false. Otherwise, it will return true, right? So let's execute and check this, right? So I have to pass the first logic. Let's pass the true itself, right? So the first logic will be, I'm passing a true here. Right, this is my first. And my second logic is true as well, right? So I'll simply mention true here. So basically this is applying OR between true and true, right? So let's check the output. The final output is true, right? The similar way, let's say if I apply it, OR between true or false, right? So true or false will also return me true. In the similar way, let's check between false and true, right? False and true. To execute this, here also I'm getting true. Now the final output is, I'll simply check the OR condition between a false and a false. Right, so this will give me false. All right, so this is the implementation between true and false, right? And let's check. Let's see the executions here. What we'll do here is we'll simply use the OR operator, and what the OR will be used will be, we'll check whether the marks is greater than, let's say 80 in physics and in physics or in maths. Right. So in this particular column, what we'll do is we'll simply use the OR condition and we'll check whether the marks is greater than 80 in physics or the marks is greater than 80 in mathematics, right? So we'll simply check whether a student has scored more than 80 marks in either of these subjects or not, right? So we're not interested in subjects, but we are only interested in marks. If any one of these values will be greater than 80, then we'll get true as the output, right? So let's check this. We'll simply use the OR condition here. Okay, so right, so we'll simply use the OR condition here. All right, now the first logic that I have to pass is I'll have to check whether the marks is greater than 80 in mathematics. So this is the marks in mathematics. I'll simply check whether this is greater than 80. This is my first logical operator. Right, this is the first logical condition that I'm checking here. And the second logical condition that I'm going to check is whether the marks in physics is greater than 80, right? So this is how we write this. All right, we'll simply select the cell containing the marks. We'll not input the marks directly, but we'll simply select the cell that will be used as a reference, right? So if I'm using OR here, all right, so basically I'm checking whether marks in mathematics or in physics is greater than 80 or not. Right, so let's check the output here by executing this, and we are getting true here. as the output. So true basically tells us that yes, in either of the subjects, John has scored greater than 80. Right? I'll use the same condition again. Let's say I'll use the OR operator. I'll simply check whether the marks in mathematics is greater than 80 for Aman, and marks in physics, whether this is greater than 80 or not. Right? So if either of these satisfies, we'll get true as the output. Otherwise, we'll get false as the output. So here we are getting false as the output because 56 is of course less than 80, and 69 at the same time is also less than 80. So which means Aman did not score more than 80 marks in any of these subjects, right? So which is why we are getting false as the output here. I'll double click here simply, and this will be flash filled, right? So this is true again. So yes, 94 is greater than 80, and 96 as well is greater than 80. Next, we are getting false here for Akash, and 67 is less than 80, and 54 is also less than 80, right? Next is for Vinita. So for Vinita, 94 is greater than 80, but 45 is not greater than 80. So yes, any one of them, if returns true, will get true as the final output, which is exactly what we are getting. Right? Finally, for Stella, 72 is less than 80, and 61 is also less than 80. So hence, we are getting false as the final output. All right. So I hope everyone understood this. Right. So you can simply raise your hands to confirm if you are able to understand the OR topic. All right. All right. Great. Great. So I'm lowering everyone's hands now. All right. So this is how OR works. Right. So I'll just give you a quick homework. Right. So your homework is, this is the first question will be, you have to use the OR function in Excel to check whether the marks is greater than 90 in either of maths or chemistry. Right, this is your first homework. Your second homework is again use OR function, right, to check if marks are greater than maybe 85 in let's say either of the three subjects, right, which is maths, chemistry, and or physics. All right. So guys, this data is very small. You can simply watch the session and you can simply construct this data at your end. Right. So yes, guys, if any one of you wants to take the screenshot, you can take the screenshot of this data right? You can reconstruct this data at your end. All right. So these are the two homeworks that you need to do, right? Related to or. I'll also give you homeworks related to and. Right. Now, the second condition, the second logical operator that you'll be using is or. Right. And how does it will be and. Right. And how does and work? And also works between conditions. Right. So you'll have, let's say, the condition one and condition two. All right. So here what will happen is, again, your conditions will return either true or false as the output, right? And again, we'll have the combination of four such scenarios, four unique scenarios. Let's say when your condition one returns true and your condition two also returns true. So in this case, your final output will be true. Right. Now, let's say if either of these condition returns false. Right. So let's say your condition one returns true and your condition two returns false. So in this case, the final output will be false. Right. So if either of the condition returns false, your final output will be false here. Let's say this returns you true. So false and true will return you false. All right. And finally, when both the condition are false, this will return you false as the final output. All right. So to summarize, and will give you true as the final output only and only when both the condition returns true. Otherwise, this is going to return you false as the output, right? In the contrast to this, when we used or conditions, right? So with or, false will only be returned when both the condition returns you false. Otherwise, this is going to return you true. All right. And this is, and just opposite is the AND gates, right? So this is the comparison between or and. Or will return you false when both the conditions are false, and will return you true only when both the conditions are true. All right, so this is how AND works. We'll see the implementation of this in Excel as well. Right, so I hope everyone is able to follow this AND part as well. Right, you can simply raise your hands to confirm if you're able to follow the AND conditions or the AND logical operators. All right, so let's see the implementation, right? In Excel, you'll be able to understand this in a better way, right? So as usual, what we will do is we'll simply check for the AND conditions. Right, these are ANDs, and this is the output of OR. Right, so true or true. Let's say I'll be using AND here. Right, so AND will basically check for the conditions and return you true or false based on. So first is true, and the second condition also returns true. Right, so if I execute this, I'll get true as the output. Again, I'll use and here, right? I'll be using and here. The first condition returns me true and the second condition returns me false. So in this particular case, the final output will be false, right? I'll use between, let's say, false and true, right? So this will also return me false. And the final output is that I'll be using the and between both the false here, right? So the final output I'll be getting will be false, right? So this is how and works, and or. You can basically see these are the same conditions that we have kept, and these are the respective outputs that we are getting, right? You can compare the output between and or. All right, now what we'll do is we'll check this time using the and condition, right? If the marks are greater than 80 in both the subjects, right? Both the subjects basically are, let's say, let's take maths and physics. All right, so here basically we are checking using the and condition whether the marks is greater than 80 in both maths and physics, right? So what I'll do is I'll simply use and function. The first is I'll simply check whether the marks in mathematics is greater than 80 or not. And the second condition is I'll check whether the marks in physics is greater than 80 or not. Right, so this will return me true if and only if marks in both the subjects are greater than 80. Otherwise, it is going to return me a false here. Right, so this is returning me false because 72 is of course less than 80. Right, in the similar way, if I double click here, this is the only one student who has scored more than 80 marks in both the subjects, right? Which is Arjun, who has scored 94 in mathematics and 96 in physics, right? So this is the difference between the output of and or. Right, so I'll just repeat this and output. See, and similar to or basically works between conditions, right? So the first condition that we are using is we are simply checking whether marks in mathematics is greater than 80 or not, right? So B2 basically is the one that is highlighted in blue color here, right? So this is the 72 marks scored by John, which is of course less than 80. So this is returning us false. And the second condition is the output in C2. So here C2 basically contains 88 marks, which is the marks in physics scored by John, right? So here we are checking whether marks in both the subjects are greater than 80 or not, right? So this will give us output based on whether the conditions are satisfied or not. This is how and works. All right. So yes, guys, take 2 minutes of break and then we'll proceed ahead with the discussions. Right. So if you change, let's say greater than 80 to greater than 70 or greater than 60, you'll get the output based on what you're getting the result. Right. So for example, if you change this to greater than 70, so 72 is of course greater than 70, right? So you'll get true as the output. This is the logic that you have to apply. Right, so the condition will be same throughout the list of students. We are only checking whether marks in both physics and chemistry, mathematics is greater than 80 or not, using the and conditions here in this particular column. All right, so you can simply, let's say, alter these conditions and you can check the relevant output that you are getting. All right, guys, take let's say 5 minutes of break, and then we'll proceed ahead with the discussions. Right, so 5 minutes of break for everyone. Please do not ping in the chat section that you're not getting a voice because we are on break. Right, so the GitHub link I'll share towards the session. All right, guys. So let's proceed ahead further. Right. So next we are going to discuss about the not is very simple. Right. Not basically turns true into false and turns false into true. Right. So this is how not works. Let's see the implementation of this. Right. So in this column, we are going to check for the not conditions. Right. So what we'll do is we'll simply alter the results that we have got from the or condition. Right. So I'll simply apply not in this particular column, and how we are going to do this is there's a not operator directly, right? It clearly says changes false to true or true to false, right? So the logic that we are applying is the output of or result here, right? So since we have got true here, if we apply not on this, we'll get false, right? Same goes with all other columns here. True has been converted to false, true is converted to false, and false is converted to true. Right, so this is how not condition works. Moving ahead further, we'll also discuss about the logical conditions. Right, so how logical conditions basically work is basically it will work based on the if and else conditions. Right, so what are if and else conditions? Let's say I ask you to go to the supermarket. Right, and if you find bread, then buy bread. Right, else you simply buy jam. Right, so here let's say if you find bread, you buy bread. Right, if you don't find bread, you simply buy jam. Right, so assuming that jam is always available, right, so I simply ask you to go to the supermarket, and if you find bread, you buy bread, otherwise you buy jam. Right, so this is how if condition works. So again here, this will be replaced with some condition. Right, and if this condition satisfies, we'll simply output something. Right, otherwise we are going to output something else. All right, so I see a lot of you asking about the not function one more time. So not function basically converts false to true and true to false. Right, this is exactly what not does. It will change your false to true and true to false. So what we are doing is we are simply applying the output not function on the output of or. Right, so here we are applying not on true, so this true has been changed to false. Right, in the similar way here we are applying it on false, hence we are getting true as the output. Right, so this is about the not function. So if you are having more than two parameters, you'll simply apply the and or condition first, and then you're going to apply the not function based on what kind of output you want. All right, so let's check the implementation of if and else in our data set that we are discussing here. Here, what we are going to do is we'll check using the if condition. All right, we'll check using the if condition. If let's say marks in maths is greater than 80, then we are going to provide something called as maths scholarship. Right, so if the marks in mathematics is greater than 80, we are going to provide the math scholarship that to that particular student. So how this can be done is I'll simply use equal to, I'll use if, right? So if basically checks whether a condition is met and returns one value if true, otherwise returns another value if the condition is not met, right? So let's check. These are the three inputs that needs to be provided. First is the logical test. Since we are checking here, the marks in mathematics is greater than 80, right? And we are going to provide the math scholarship if the marks is actually greater than 80, otherwise will not provide any scholarship. Right? So let's see, this is the marks in mathematics. I'll check whether this is greater than 80 or not. This is a logical test that is completed, right? Now, second value says value if true, right? So value if true basically means if this condition is satisfied, whether the marks is greater than 80, then what you want as the output. So what I want as the output is simply type maths scholarship. All right, followed by a comma. Now I have to pass the value if false. So I'll simply write no scholarship. I'll simply write no scholarship here. Right, so if I execute this, it says no scholarship because the marks in mathematics is 72, which is not greater than 80. Right, so if I, let's say, flash fill this, I'll simply get all the other outputs. Here, only two students have scored this math scholarship. The first is Arjun, whose marks is 94 in mathematics, and the second student is Vinita, whose marks is again 94 in mathematics. Right, so since these are the only two students who have secured more than 80 marks in mathematics, hence we are providing some math scholarship to these students. All right, so I hope everyone is able to understand how if condition works, how you'll get one output if the condition is met, and how you'll get the other output if the condition is not met. You can simply raise your hands to confirm this if you are able to follow the if condition. All right, I'm lowering everyone's hands here. And now in the homework sheet, all right, so in the homework sheet, your second homework, third homework will be you have to apply. The first is you have to apply not function in the output of the AND operator. Right, so how we applied not function on the output of OR operator, in the similar way you have to apply not function on the output of AND operator. Right, now the fourth question that will be your homework is in like how we have provided math scholarship if the number of, if let's say the marks scored by the student in mathematics is greater than 80, in the similar way you have to make two columns, right? One for chemistry scholarship and one for physics scholarship. Right, simply check if marks are greater than 80 in physics and chemistry, and simply provide the relevant scholarship to that student, right? You have to do this operation in separate columns, right? So this will be your homework. Right, simply provide, let's say, physics scholarship if the marks is greater than 80 in physics, and simply provide the chemistry scholarship if the marks is greater than 80 in chemistry. Okay, so this way you have to do this homework. Okay, one of you is asking how do you apply not function? You simply follow this particular column, right? How we have seen, we have applied not operator on this particular column. In the similar way, you have to apply not operator on the output of AND. Right? So these are like very basics that we are discussing. Right? Now, let's proceed ahead. And let's combine AND along with if. Right, so in this particular column, what I'm going to do is I'm going to check if marks is greater than 80 in both maths and chemistry. Then I'm going to provide something called maybe a scholarship. Simple, let's say some district level scholarship. Right, but I'll check for both marks in mathematics as well as in chemistry. If the marks are greater than 80 in both of them, then only I'm going to provide this scholarship. Right, so how I can do this is I'll simply use the if condition here. Right, inside the logical test, since I have to check whether the marks is greater than 80 in both the subjects. So if it will be greater than 80 in both the subjects, then only the scholarship will be provided. All right. So here what I'm going to do is inside this if in the logical test, I'm going to use the AND condition. Right. So the AND condition will basically first check whether marks is in mathematics is greater than 80, and it will check whether the marks in chemistry is greater than 80. I'll close this bracket. Right, I'll close this bracket and my logical test is completed. Now I'll simply output whether I want the output, what exactly I want the output, right? So since it's a district level scholarship, I'll simply provide the district scholarship. Otherwise, what I'll do is I'll not provide any scholarship, right? So no scholarship. If the condition is not met, right? So this is my formula which is completed. I'll just walk you through. Since we wanted to check whether the marks is greater than 80 in both mathematics and chemistry, hence we have used the AND operator inside the if condition, right? So basically, whether B2 is greater than 80 or not, this will return us either true or false based on the student's marks. Again, we'll simply check whether the marks in chemistry is greater than 80 or not. Again, this will give me true or false based on what marks student has scored. Right now, these are the two conditions and we are getting two outputs. They could be combination of true and false, right? So again, we have applied the AND operator here because I want the marks should be greater than 80 in both the subjects, right? So since it will be greater than 80 in both the subjects, I'm using AND operator here, right? So this will basically give me one single output, either true or false, right? So based on this true and false, if let's say I'm getting true as the output, I'll simply print district scholarship. If I'm getting false as the output from this AND operator, I'll simply write no scholarship. right? So if I execute this, I'm getting no scholarship as the output, because in chemistry, marks is greater than 80, of course. This condition returns true, but in mathematics, the marks is not greater than 80. Hence, false and true is returning us false, right? So once it is returning us false, we'll simply output based on the false that we are getting, right? So I'll simply double click here and expand this. Again, there are only 2 students. First is Arjun, who has scored 99 in chemistry and 94 in mathematics. He's getting the district scholarship, right? And in a similar way, let's say Vinita has scored greater than 80 marks in chemistry, which is 82, and greater than 80 marks in mathematics, which is 94. Right? So since both of these conditions are met, it is returning you true as the final output. And since we are getting true as the final output, we'll print the result based on the true condition, right? So this is the district scholarship these students are getting. Right, so you cannot use anything else apart from what is being demonstrated here, right? You cannot use any ampersand sign, anything, right? This is the right syntax to write this particular function, right? Use if function in Excel. This is the correct method if you want to use it along with and, right? You cannot use anything else, otherwise you'll get an error. Right? Okay, I've already informed that I'll be uploading the solutions of percentiles in the GitHub link. Right, this has already been informed in the live session. All right, so okay, one of you is asking, it is applicable only on 2 columns at a time, or we can use more than 2 columns? Answer to this is you can use any number of columns, right? But the and or will purely work with 2 conditions at a time. Even if you pass 10 conditions, then also 2 conditions will be compared at once and you'll get the relevant output, right? Then again, 2 conditions will be compared and you'll get the relevant output, and so on. All right, so I'll share this GitHub link by the end of this session. Those who have not received it, so it is advised to collect it before leaving the session today. All right, this has already been shared in the previous session. Right, and please don't post your same doubts again and again. Right, so I hope everyone is able to understand the and along with if. Right, so here also I'll give you a homework for if. Right, so this is your 5th question, that will be homework. You simply check if the marks in maths and physics, right, is greater than 80. If true, print, let's say district scholarship 2. Else print no scholarship. All right, in the similar way, you simply check if the marks is greater than 80 in either of physics or chemistry, then print, let's say, district scholarship 3 as output, else simply print no scholarship. All right. Now, finally, use the if condition and check if marks is greater than 90 in all the 3 subjects. If true, simply print, let's say, some national scholarship, right? Otherwise, let's say, else no scholarship. So these are the if-else conditions that can be used along with and or. Okay, one of you is asking here why in the last column I have used and, right? So this is all about this particular question or formula itself, right? We are checking whether if you read this, if marks is greater than 80 in both maths and chemistry, right? So we want to check whether the marks is greater than 80 in both the subjects. So for that, we have to use the AND function. Right now, what we are going to do is I'll insert a column here, right? And we are going to convert the marks in mathematics into grades of mathematics. Right? How this is done? This is done using nested if conditions. Right? So how nested if works? Nested if is nothing, but it is basically one condition inside the other. We are going to check whether we're going to check for the nested if. Nested if will basically, how this is done is we are using only one if condition at a time, right? For example, in this particular case, we are using only one if condition. We can use one if condition inside another if condition as well. We can use it inside another if condition as well, like this. Right? So this is the case where we call nested if, because one if is nested inside the other. These two if is nested inside the outer if. Right? So let's say what we are going to do is we are going to convert these marks into grades. Right? And how we are going to mark it? We'll simply, let's first divide it between 2 grades. Let's divide it between 3 grades. Right? If the marks is between 0 to 30, we'll simply provide, let's say, third division, or okay, let's provide a C grade. If it is from 31 to 65, let's provide a B grade. if the marks is from 66 to 100, will provide an A grade. Right. So this is simply how we are dividing this. Let's execute this using a nested if function, and you'll be able to understand. So what we are going to do is we are going to use this particular condition. So let's mention this condition inside the formula bar of Excel cell. I'll use equal to, use an if condition. I have to pass the logical test, right? So I'll simply mention, since I have to check between 0 and 30, right? So since the number which is between 0 and 30, it can be written in this way. Mark this, all right, or try to understand this. Anything which is between 0 and 30 is basically the number is greater than 0 and it is less than 30, right? Then only it will fall between 0 and 30. Right, this number should be greater than 0, right? For example, let's say 27. Let's take an example, right? This number is greater than 0. This condition returns true, right? And we'll write an and here. And this number is also less than 30. This also returns true. Both of them should return true. Then only the number will fall between 0 and 30. This will return you true as the final output. Right. So I'm going to write this particular condition using this format in Excel. I'll mention and, I'll use and conditions, right? So let's check the first condition and mention it in Excel. All right, so here, this is the if function. I have to use the logical test here. Right, so the logical test will be, I'll be using AND function and I'll check whether this value is greater than 0. Right, followed by, and the same value should be less than 30. This is my AND condition that I've mentioned in this particular format, followed by a comma. Now, if this value or this condition is true, let's say you have some 27 here, what do you want as the output, right? So what I want as the output is I want capital C followed by, I have to mention the value if false. Now value if false has again two conditions, A and B, right? Both of them are falling into different categories or different range of numbers, right? So again, what I'll do is I'll use an if condition here and I'll check whether this value is greater than, I'll use an AND condition and I'll check if this value is greater than 31, all right, and this value is less than 65. So this value falls into 31 to 65 range, followed by a comma. I'll use, now I have to output the value if true. Now, if this condition is satisfied, I'll simply pass capital B as the output, right? Again, I have to write the condition if value if false, right? So let's say the value does not falls into 0 to 30. It does not falls into 31 to 65, right? So it will fall into 66 to 100 range, right? But your Excel does not know that this marks has been evaluated out of 100, right? So if accidentally someone enters 120 instead of 72, then also he'll get an A grade if we directly mention capital A like this. And close the bracket. This is also, this formula is completed, but this formula is not logically correct, right? Because you'll get an A here, no doubt, right? You'll get an A here. There's no doubt in this. But if I change this 72 to let's say 190, then also you'll get an A here. Because this is the logical error that I have performed while writing the formula. So what I'll do is I'll simply mention, instead of directly writing A, I'll use the third if here, right? I'll use the third if condition here. And this if condition will basically open up the range for 66 to 100, right? So I'll simply use an AND function here. I'll simply write this value should be greater than 66 and this value should be less than 100, right? Then if this condition satisfies, I want capital A as output. All right. So now it is giving me false because I did not mention any condition where if the marks is greater than 100, what I have to output, right? So it says false. It's returning me false because no condition is mentioned here. Let's change it to our original number, which is 72. I'll get an A grade here. Right? In the similar way, I'll double click here and Aman has got a B grade because 56 falls into 31 to 65 category. 94 falls into 66 to 100. 67 also falls between 66 and 100. 94 again 66 to 100 and 72 again between 66 to 100, right? So this is how the marks are converted into grades. If we can segregate this more further and we can define with a difference of 10, right? And you can assign more number of grades. Let's say we can simply assign A plus B, B plus C, C plus D, and fail. We can write it this way as well, right? So the maximum number of right? So I'll come to that point. If the marks is, let's say 30, or if the marks is 100, what will be the output? Just wait for the right time. We'll discuss about the boundary conditions, right? We haven't discussed yet. We'll be discussing about the boundary conditions. Don't hurry up, right? When you're learning, simply learn. All right. So here we have converted between three grades, A, B, and C. All right. Since the range of values that we have decided is not very vast, hence we are getting similar grades for most of the students. Right. Now, let's check for the boundary conditions. All right. So we have clearly mentioned from greater than 0 and less than 30. So 0 and 30 are not included here. Let's say if I simply mention, if I'll simply replace this with 30, it will return me false because this value is not taken into consideration. All right. Let's say for example, if I put 31 here, this will also return me false because these values are the boundary values. Let's say 65. Let me put 65 here. This will also return me a false because these are boundary values, right? These are the values where the grades are changing. So I have to put one mark into each of the sides, right? So for example, let's say even if someone scores 0, right? This will also fall into the value that is not assigned. So what I'll do is I'll simply replace it with, let's say 30. All right, and it is returning me false. So we'll fix this. Let's say we'll start with greater than or equal to 0 and less than and equal to 30. Right. So if I put this condition, now 30 is included and we are getting C as the output. Right. We can check for the value 0 as well. 0 is also assigned. Right. Okay, just okay. Sorry, this has not been implemented, right? Yes, now it is implemented. So if we assign 0 here, we'll get a C grade, right? The 0 is included as of now. We'll simply revert it back to the original value, right? So now 31 is not included. All right, so let's make the changes in the first formula itself. Here 31 is not included, so let's include 31 here. So this is greater than equal to 31 and we'll make it less than equal to 65. Less than or equal to 65. So now 31 and 65 both are included. If I'll simply flash fill this, these values will be changed to their respective grades, right? So these are getting B grades. In the similar way, let's say someone who has scored 66 marks, this is also not included. And someone, let's say, who has scored 100 marks, this is also not included, right? So we'll include these 66 and 100 as well by simply putting equal to sign here as well as putting equal to sign here, right? So if I double click here now, all these values will be converted to grades. So this is how you can easily convert values into grades or marks into grades. All right, so let's take a more complex example. All right, so I'll simply mention here, these are grades between only A, B, and C. Let me insert one more column here, and here I'll simply convert marks into grades, that is in mathematics only. But this time we'll divide our grades into 5 categories, right? So 5 grades, let's say A, B, let's say C, D, and E, right? So this way we are going to divide. Let's define the condition first so that we will be able to follow the conditions. All right, so let's define the conditions for 5 categories of grade. And these are the conditions. Let's say if the marks is between 0 to 40, simply provide an E grade. Right, so this 40 is included here. 0 is also included, right? Moving on from 40 to, let's say, 60 marks. Here 40 is not included, but 60 is included. Will provide a capital D grade. Now going from 60 to 75, here 60 is not included, but 75 is included. Right, so wherever the boundary value is included, I'm putting a square bracket, and wherever the boundary value is not included, I'm putting a round bracket, right? So this is how we represent numbers in mathematics, whether they are included or not, right? So between, let's say, 60 to 65 will provide a C grade. Between, let's say, 75 to 90 will provide a B grade. Here 75 is not included, but 90 is included. Will provide a capital B grade. And 90 to 100, 100 is included, 90 is not included, will provide an A grade. Right, so let's put this down in Excel cell so that we will learn how to implement these logics. All right, so let's take this particular cell. I'll use an if condition here. The logical test is I have to use the AND for this value should be greater than equal to 0 and this value should be less than equal to 40, right? So 0 and 40 both are included here, which is why we have put equal to sign on both the conditions. I'm closing this bracket. My logical test is over. Now, what value I want if this condition is satisfied? I want a capital E grade to be provided, right? Followed by a comma. Value if false, I'll use an if nested if here. Again, I'll use an AND condition, right? And in AND, I'll check whether this value is greater than 40. I'm not including equal to because equal to is this value is not included in D grade, right? Followed by the same value should be less than equal to 60. All right, so 40 is included. Sorry, 40 is not included and 60 is included in the second logical test for the condition of capital D. I'll put a comma again, write an if condition, write an AND condition, and I'll put this value is greater than 60, which is not included. And the same value should be less than equal to 75 because 75 is included here, right? I'll put a comma. Now this condition is for capital C grade, followed by, let's follow for the B grade. I'll use an if condition here. I'll use an AND. We'll check whether this value is greater than 75, which is not included, right? And the same value is less than equal to 90. 90 is included here. If it is included, right, I'll simply mention a capital B grade here. And finally, I'll write the last if along with an AND. And inside the AND, I'll mention that this value should be greater than 90. And this value should be less than equal to 100, right? So 100 is included here. Simply provide a capital A grade. Close this bracket and the formula is completed, right? You can see the complete formula in the formula bar here, highlighting this, right? So you can see the complete formula in the formula bar here. So you can simply put equal to, and this student is getting an E grade because he has got 30 marks, which falls into 0 to 40 category. Right now, let me double click here. Let's see what are the range of values that we are getting. So this student who has got 56, his grade is D. Let's see. So it's falling between 40 to 60 range. D is correct. 94 is falling between 90 and 100. A is correct. 100 A is correct. 65 is falling between 60 and 75. Hence, C grade is correct. And 66 is falling again between 60 and 75, hence C grade is correct. Right, so we did not receive B anywhere. Let's see. Okay, let's change this value to maybe 88. Right, so this student will receive a B grade now. All right, so yes, these are working perfectly fine. And this is how you're going to use these nested if conditions. I hope everyone is able to follow this. You can simply raise your hand to confirm if you are able to follow. All right. Right, so you can change these values to any other, right? You can change these values to any other value to check what values you are getting as the output. All right, so let's alter the values of John itself to check in every boundary condition. Let's say if he's getting 0, he should get an E grade. All right, if he's getting, let's say 40, then also he should get an E grade, which is correct. Let's say if the value is getting is 41, he should get a D grade, which is again correct. We are getting D here. All right, let's check for the boundary condition of 60. Right, so if he's getting a 60 marks, again he should get a D grade. This is correct. If he is getting, let's say 61, he should get a C grade. So this is changed to C now. If he is getting, let's say 75, then also he should get a C grade, which is correct. If he is getting, let's say 76, he should get a B grade, right? So he's getting a B grade now. If it is, let's say 90, he will be getting again B grade. If he is getting, let's say 91, he will be getting an A grade. So this is A grade. If he's getting, let's say 100, he should again get an A grade. If he's getting any other value, which is not in the range of 0 to 100, let's say minus 100, let's say minus 11. So this will return you a false because this condition is not available. If the value is greater than 100, let's say 101, then also he'll get a false here because this condition is also not included. Let's change it to its original value, which is 34, and he's getting an E grade now. All right, so even if the values are in decimal, then also these will not change, right? So let's say if the value is, let's check for any boundary condition. All right, so let's check for maybe 75. Right, so he's getting a C grade now. If this value is 75.01, this value is greater than 75 now. Right, so he will be getting a B grade now, right? 75.01 is greater than 75. All right, and let's say if this value is 74.99, then also this value is less than 75, and he will be getting C grade here, right? So this is how it can be seen. You can simply check all the values between any decimals. If you want to, experiment this at your end, you're free to do. Right? Same goes with 90. There's nothing different. And we have already checked for every boundary conditions. Right? Now you can do this at your end, any other experiment that you want to do. Right? If you want to check for fractions of values, if you want to check for any other thing, you're free to do, right? All right, guys. So as I believe that a lot of things have been, I've walked you through a lot of things in a single session. So let's stop this session here only today. All right. And we'll continue this discussion in tomorrow's session. Right. So greater than and equal to 90 is already used, guys. If you check this formula here, right, 90 is already included in B grade here. Right, so we don't need to include it in C grade again, A grade again. Otherwise, it will cause an error because you cannot include same marks in both the grades. All right, so it's already included. You can simply check even if you wish to, right? Let's say if you're putting a 90 here, you're getting a B grade because it is included in B side of the grading part. All right, so yes, guys, let's wrap up this session here itself. All right, okay, as promised, I'll share the GitHub link with everyone. Just give me a moment. I'll share this GitHub link with every one of you so that you don't miss it. And I'm saying it again, please do not miss this link. Let's say every upcoming assignments will be uploaded in this link only. All right, so this is the GitHub link. I'll be sharing a few questions as well in this link after tomorrow's session. All right, so this is the GitHub link. you can simply access the data on this link. All right. So yes, guys, let's call off this session for today. I'll see you tomorrow, where we'll proceed with our discussions further. All right. So let's say those of you who wish to leave the session, you're free to do. We are not going to discuss any new topic. I'll be waiting for 5 more minutes. If any case, any one of you have any doubts in now, you're free to ask. All right, this particular Excel sheet is not going to be uploaded, right? I'll upload this Excel sheet once your Excel sessions are over, right? So meanwhile, you have to create this sheet on your own. Okay, one of you is asking the difference between percentile.inc and percentile.exe, right? So percentile.inc and percentile.exe, there's a very little difference where the minimum and maximum values are included in percentile.inc. It is basically not included in percentile.exe. Exe basically stands for excluded, inc stands for included. All right, so this is the difference between percentile.inc and percentile.exe. Right, so I have already displayed this homework sheet here. All right, I'll be uploading more homeworks on your GitHub link. All right, so you can check your GitHub link. Maybe latest by Tuesday or Wednesday, I'll be uploading new set of homeworks based on the same set of questions. All right, or if additional data set is required, I'll share the data as well. Right, so what is the significance of a not function purely depends on the requirement, right? So these functions are purely used based on the requirement. You need to understand how any particular function works and what exactly a particular function does, right? So when a question comes to you, you will be able to solve it if you know how to use the functions of Excel, right? These are purely use case based scenarios. The usage of the function will purely be based on the use case scenario. All right, so if you want to see the exact difference between percentile.inc and percentile.exe, simply apply both of these formulas in different cell and check the output. You'll get the output that you'll see will basically display the difference between percentile.exe and percentile.inc, right? So just for your information, these functions, right? These outputs are purely using the inc function, right? Let's do this using exe functions. Let me show you, right? So you can simply use the percentile.exe. All right, simply pass, this was the salary column. I'm passing the salary column. Here, minimum and maximum values are not included, which is why 0th and 100th percentile is not defined in case of exe, right? So I want the value of this divided by 100. All right, so this is a numerical error or number error that I'm getting because 0th percentile is not defined. And if you can see, we are getting the differences between the values as well in percentiles, but the median will remain same, right? Median, you'll get the same value. The 0th and 100th percentile, we are getting a number error because The minimum and maximum values are not included in case of EXC. This is the basic difference between INC and EXC. Right. So if you're getting an error that you are passing too many arguments for the if condition, you're using the wrong formula, right? Please check your formula in that cases. Right. So yes, guys, I'll be sharing this spreadsheet with you. But I'll be only sharing this spreadsheet once your Excel sessions are over. All right. All right, guys. So since we are not getting any more doubts, we're wrapping up the session for today. Right. So thank you everyone for joining the session. I'll see you tomorrow. Right. So I'll see you tomorrow and we'll proceed ahead with our discussions. Right. So thank you everyone for joining the session and you have a good night.